Reyno, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. Lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And the good news is that even though Reyno de Beer has load shedding, we have a solution. He will definitely be joining us in a couple of minutes. Now, tonight we're going to be having a bit of a rant about this corrupt ANC government. And just to get ourselves in the mood, I'm going to play a few little video clips which will kind of show you what a load of BS they are. Let's start off with this one. Here we go. And this just shows how incompetent the ANC are at everything they touch.
Of the Security Council of...
Whoopsie. That was quick.
Sorry.
Everything they touch just collapses in a heap. Well, let's keep on going. How about the promises to bring ministers to account if they are found to be corrupt? This is a beauty. This once again is Hippo Eyes. Here we go.
Now, with regard to implementation of resolutions and guidelines on the issue of stepping aside, the NEC reaffirmed the resolutions of the 54th National Conference on ANC credibility and integrity, as well as decisions of the NEC meetings, which were held in August of last year and in December of last year on the implementation of these resolutions. The NEC resolved that these resolutions must be implemented in line with the guidelines and procedures adopted by the NEC at its meeting on the 13th and 14th of February 2021. All members who have been charged with corruption or other serious crimes must step aside within 30 days, failing which they should be suspended in terms of Rule 2570 of the ANC Constitution. The meeting emphasized that the 30-day period will be used to enable the implementation of the decision in line with the guidelines, and this is not for the review of the decision. The NEC also agreed that the provincial chairpersons and secretaries would meet with the national officials during the time to further refine the guidelines, to make additions and to sharpen them, to ensure the resolution can be effectively and practically implemented. The Secretary General's office will work with the provinces to identify all people affected and inform them of the decision. The ANC welcomed the decision by the ANC Secretary General, Comrade Ace Magashule, to use this time to seek the counsel of past leaders of our movement, and the ANC supports our Secretary General in this effort.
Ha ha ha. I agree with you, Joan Famuli. Blah, 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 blah. As I always say, if you give this guy, Cyril Ramaphosa, an enema, he'll fit in a shoebox quite easily. But let's not forget this famous statement. And I'm talking about here the achievements of the ANC since 1994. Let's have a look at what their achievements are. Here we go. Top 10 achievements of the ANC. Diddly squat. All right, guys. I've been deliberately holding off for a couple of minutes because Reyno needs to get his setup going because of load shedding, I mentioned, but he should be right by now. So, he says I'm ready. Okay, here we go. Over to Reyno de Beer. And we're going to be talking about the chaos that South Africa is in right now. Hi, Reyno.
Yes, good day, Scott.
How are you, buddy?
Fine, and you?
Excellent, excellent. Except I can't see you.
That's strange.
I saw you earlier.
See ya. Yes. I don't know why.
Is this on your mobile phone?
Suddenly, no. Oh, okay, sorry. I see what the problem is.
Okay, guys. We're just waiting for Reyno to sort out his camera and then we'll get straight into this. And tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of things related to South Africa. For example, is South Africa a failed state? What are the ANC doing to the country? And there's our man. There's Reyno. Oh, what happened? You got black. Oh, there you go. That's it.
We went into load shedding just now, so
yeah,
everything is fine. You've seen the dark side of me. Now it's the light side.
Now, Reyno, let's get right into this. I mean, you've had a lot of battles, legal battles with the system in South Africa over the last few years, and I applaud you. You're someone who puts his money where his mouth is. Now,
well, thank you.
South Africa, is it a failed state?
Well, that is a very, very simple answer. Definitely yes, but it's not because of the ANC. It's because the South Africa has been a failed state since most probably as early as 31st of May 1902. And definitely from the beginning of the Union of South Africa, it simply did not make any sense that the Boers and the British were fighting and suddenly out of the blue everyone said, okay, let's love one another, and we're going to be one nation, and together with all the indigenous tribes of South Africa. It was meant to fail from the very beginning. So yes, unfortunately we are a failed state, but it's not in particular just because of the ANC. There's a lot of history behind it.
Now, when you're talking about failed and that sort of level, you're talking about the cultural side, where you've got this division, for example, between the English-speaking whites and the Afrikaans-speaking whites because of what happened during the Second Boer War. And I remember when I was a young kid, growing up at Cornwallis, there was a boarding school in Pietermaritzburg, there was, even there, in the early 1960s, there was talk of this kind of hostility between the Afrikaners and the English because of what happened 50 years before, or 60 years before. So do you think that's been an underlying problem in South Africa from the very get-go?
Very interesting thing is that way back in approximately the early 2000s, I was at a ANC meeting specifically, and one of the big members, if I can, or the famous members of the ANC, they said that, you know what, we've got one problem in South Africa, and that problem is we have never we've gotten rid of conscription. And it was a bit strange for me to listen to this ANC member saying this, but he said, and that is why the English speaking and the Afrikaners or the Boers were actually united because they went to war together. They were basically brought up in the system, going to the border war, and so they actually got united there. But when it came to, for example, back to Pretoria, there was always the one rugby game that everyone wanted to see was the rugby game between Office and Boys High. That was the big event of the year, and that was always, again, the British fighting the Boers all over again. So unfortunately, South Africa has got this problem of unification. But I always say that irrespective of all the tribes and the differences between the English and the Afrikaans-speaking communities, we are much more united on grassroots level that we want to believe. If it wasn't for the media, the mainstream media, constantly telling us that we are different and we are divided, we would basically realize that we respect one another, we can grow up next to one another without any problems. But if we can get this one equation or this one problem out of the equation, the mainstream media, we would definitely be more united than we really want to give us the credit for.
Yeah. Now you raised a really interesting word there, and that was respect. Because what does seem to be lacking in certain quarters is, in particular with the economic freedom fighters and that BLM mob who were thrown out of politics, the lack of respect towards other cultures is palpable. And I think that is a huge undermining issue that is destroying the fabric of South Africa.
Oh, definitely. Scott, I cannot agree more, because unfortunately, we know that we are all human beings, but unfortunately, Today, in politics especially, some people are more superior than other human beings, and we are constantly being divided. And if there is just a bit more respect for one another, we are giving Julius Malema and the so-called strawberry hats, as I call them, we give them too much to come back at us and then throw the ball back into our courts to say that we are the racist ones. Or when I say we, I'm talking about the white people in particular, but I don't like talking about whites or blacks. We all supposed to be humans. But unfortunately, we are constantly put in a position whereby we are forced to bring the disrespect out of ourselves, and constantly being in one another's throat, or that is what the mainstream media wants us to believe. But at the end of the day, respect is earned and it's not given away. So if someone like, for example, Julius Malema, who'd like respect from white people or pink people or green people in South Africa, then he must come forward and also show respect himself, and that has been lacking a lot from him in particular. And so unfortunately we don't, I don't think that we have been taught at school level these days what respect really is and how powerful respect is in unifying a nation at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that rugby match in 1995 where the Springboks won the World Cup, I think that one of the reasons that was such a powerful moment for what was back then the Rainbow Nation was because of the respect that everybody watching that game had for the team who'd just beaten the All Blacks at the last moment. I mean, that was just an amazing match. Now, I just want to get back to Julius Malema, because here's a little prick, let's face it. When I had spoke to Rob Hersoff on a live stream about, must be about 6 or 8 months ago now, we were talking about Julius Malema, because there's that infamous photo of him standing next to Julius Malema and the guy from the UK who's apparently one of Julius Malema's handlers. And I asked Rob Hersoff, I said, look, you heard Malema speak, and you listened to this guy speak at that particular function. And Hersoff said, look, what you got to understand is that Malema speaks to his audience. And when he spoke to us in London at that meeting, he kind of made it sound like he was, right of the Freedom Front Plus party, if you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Because he was addressing people who thought totally differently. So when he's speaking to his crowd, he addresses them in a way that they're going to cheer and chant and, say what a great guy he is. And, of course, use those terrible chants that he uses. But apparently, depending on who he's speaking to, is how he changes his entire direction of what he's talking about. So he's a typical politician. He never has any integrity. Rather like Ramaphosa, who we call hippo-wise. Now, talking about the media, this to me is a biggie. Because the South African media, like the media here in Australia, the media in Canada, the media in the United States of America, they're all beholden to their masters, which are basically big business. We're talking about BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and those big institutions. So when we talk about the impact they're having in causing division in South Africa, that is planned, isn't it? I mean, that's not accidental.
Yeah, well, the media has been orchestrating rifts in communities since they came into existence. They constantly key to instigating wars. They constantly there at the scene of the crime. So unfortunately, but luckily, just like COVID had its negative side, COVID-19 also brought along very positive things as well, in the sense that we have now, or many of us have seen what the media is and what they are capable of doing. And so luckily, I believe from my side that people are waking up. They realize that they cannot trust the media as they used to, and that they always have to consider all the relevant facts, all the facts, so that they can, at the end of the day, decide for themselves what the truth is. And you've mentioned with Julius Malema the factor of a politician. A politician is nothing more than an actor on the stage. They constantly having these characters, special characters, because when you have a nice party with Julius Malema, and sorry Julius if we identify you, it's just because we all love you so much. But the fact is that the moment when you are with him, then he's got this whole change of attitude, and he's not the person, and many people have told me that who have personally met him, is that he's not the evil type of person that he is in the media or when he's a politician. And I need to come back here with a person like Jacob Zuma. When I met him, he was actually the one telling me that Hendrik Verwoerd was a good man, and he had good ideals for and ideas for South Africa. And I was totally amazed by what he was saying. And then he started telling how he, as Jacob Zuma, actually identified with someone like Hendrik Verwoerd, where Hendrik Verwoerd has been highlighted as the so-called architect of apartheid. And if one, and this is where it also comes in with the system change. I will go into greater detail as we go on tonight regarding the system change and what should or could be assisting us when we're going forward. And next year is such a very important year to go and make your decision whether you're going to vote and for which party are you going to vote, or should you basically support the invalid ballot party and not even go to vote. So all those aspects we need to identify and look at in greater detail. And but yes, Scott, let's continue. You the one asking the questions.
Well, I love the way we interact. It's fabulous. Now you mentioned Verwoerd. And Verwoerd has often been seen as the father of apartheid, even though he wasn't. But what he did bring in was a homeland policy. We had homelands like Transkei, Ciskei, Bophuthatswana, etc., etc., etc. And when you consider that there's 16 different tribal groups, African tribal groups in South Africa, it made a lot of sense, because you bring those tribes together and they can basically enrich their own cultures. And I think where Zuma is in particularly a unique politician is that because he's a Zulu, his focus was to try and keep the culture within the Zulu nation, regardless of whether you think lobola and having multiple wives and stuff like that is wrong or right. I mean, he was still trying to keep that tribal culture solid. Whereas there are a lot of these tribes like the Xhosa who've basically lost their tribal foundations, and now they're kind of lost and just floating around the place. And I think this could be also a big reason why South Africa has so much crime, which is a big aspect or big part of South Africa being a failed state. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, firstly, I don't believe that crime is there because of the differences between us as tribes in South Africa. There's definitely let me just go back to the type of system that we currently have in place, and now we have to be very critical of who we are and where we want to go to, because if we don't know where we are coming from, we will not know where we are heading to. And in that respect, South Africa as an apartheid state was nothing more than a socialist type of state. And I'm saying that in the connotation that people are brought up to believe that socialism is a bad thing. But it depends on who's in power when a socialist system is in place. For example, countries like first world countries like Iceland and even France, they've got socialist systems in place, but we don't see the negativity of it because of the type of support mechanism that it has got. And in apartheid years, we had a socialist system in the sense that we had free education most of the times, except for certain parts of university. We had free medical health insurance, where we had a lot of and there was also price control. I will get to that also a bit later. But the fact is that when South Africa became a so-called democracy in 1994, I think all the white people in particular said that, okay, we want change. We want the system that we've got in place. As we understand it, it will just be made open for everyone else to fit nicely in place in the system. But unfortunately, we did not stay a socialist country. We have been transformed into a capitalist, open democracy, open market system. And immediately, a lot of the price control that we used to have, and also the protection that we had as consumers under the so-called socialist system have been done away with, which was totally the opposite of what the ANC supporters at that stage thought would have happened, because they also came in with this socialist, communist ideals, which is going to take place, and they were looking forward to be called equals and participate equally in everything. But that is not what neither South Africans or white South Africans nor the other people of South Africa got. It's the system that was created at the end of the day was nothing more than a pure capitalist, actually a crony state, where it's actually the main business of South Africa became crime. in itself. And now today we are stuck in a system where the politicians, the judges, the court system, the police, the defense force, the banking system, every single part of this system is now infiltrated by crime. And how are we going to change this? Is it possible to change this? So all those aspects we need to find answers for. And I'm not going to say that I know the answers, because that would be extremely arrogant from my side. And my opinion will most probably be not the same opinion as many other of the listeners and followers. But at the end of the day, we need to have a debate and a discussion about what is the best for South Africans, for the entire South Africans, and effectively how South Africa sees itself as probably the corridor to the African continent as well. Would it be that we need to be more open to a system like BRICS? Should we rather go to the Western or to the Commonwealth concepts? All those questions need answers, and somewhere we need to start asking those questions.
Yeah, well, as long as we don't go towards a one world government, I don't care what they do. But I mean, a one world government is where they want to take us. Now, look, I want to get back to Verwoerd and the homeland policies, because I think that it was the right idea, but I think that politically it was the wrong way of doing it. A lot of people today suggest, because of all these different groups or cultures in South Africa, that there are some natural areas, like, for example, the Kingdom of Zululand, the Western Cape, where if they became quasi-independent, rather like Cape Exeter talking about in the Cape, where you had like a federalist policy, where it's still South Africa, there's still basically it's one country, but each area has its own police force. Each area has its own health ministry. Each area has its own education department. So they basically look after these aspects of social life within their borders. And that they then have a collective interest, so that they all trade together without any tariffs and stuff like that. But it becomes a far more independent format. And as I said, you've got the Kingdom of Zululand, which would be a perfect federalist state. The Western Cape would be a perfect federalist state. The Free State, that I think would be another perfect federalist state. So you could start breaking up South Africa into these areas. What are your thoughts about that type of political solution?
Scott, you definitely going in the same direction as I would like to go, or see us going. Definitely some sort of federal system should be in place, but very interesting, and I've done this research a couple of years back. When we negotiated South Africa, the new democratic South Africa, we were made to believe that everything happened at Kudesa. So we remember that there at the Kempton Park Trade Center, all these politicians came together every single day, and they were brainstorming and had this parliament, this quasi-parliament going to take us into the future. And the focus was on Kudesa, but those talks actually started way back in 1983. So there was between 1983 and 1990, there was a total of 167 meetings that the South African government and delegations from South Africa had with the ANC, United Front, and all the other so-called other organizations. So Kudesa did not take place in 1990 onwards to 1993 or 1994. It was a gradual process, and unfortunately, very interesting, between the period of 1988 and 1989, there was a total of 71 meetings. Of the 167 that have been held, they were only during those 2 years, there were 71 meetings. And the reason for that was that the South African Reserve Bank Act have been rewritten. The 1989 South African Reserve Bank Act have been promulgated and repealed the older one. And in that, the focus was to vest the economical power of South Africa in the South African Reserve Bank, which we all should know, and we all by now have seen the interview you had with Jeff a couple of months ago, and also with the whole concept of the South African Reserve Bank is most probably the key to the system change that we need to have. We need to firstly identify what went wrong in the South African Reserve Bank. We need to go back and find out how it came that the South African Reserve Bank basically became an independent and totally a totally independent structure within South Africa, and how it has been manipulated. I am now, a couple of days back, I had a meeting with the sacked public protector, Busi Mkhwebane, and she was adamant of it, that the South African Reserve Bank is the key to change in South Africa, because the moment when she started investigating the South African Reserve Bank and the banking system, all hell broke loose. And so there are quite a number of high-level people in South Africa who shares the same sentiments as we do. We need to look at, for example, the South African Reserve Bank. We need to go and restructure the entire judiciary of South Africa. We need to go and restructure the whole system of politics in South Africa, because clearly we all saw the division that there is currently in the African National Congress when all of them voted against the public protector for her removal. So we all thought that Busi Mkhwebane is part and parcel of the ANC, and she has been there looking at the ANC to benefit the ANC. But if the ruling party, the African National Congress, together with several others, the DA, the Freedom Front, etc., all voted against or for the removal of the public protector, we can clearly see that our government as it is, there are 14 political parties represented in Parliament today. And according to me, each and every one of them have clearly been compromised. We need to get all of them out of the system, out of Parliament. To have a coalition government with any one of these 14 political parties will be devastating to the democracy of South Africa. Um, Scott,
Yeah,
I
yeah, I'm
see
here.
that my
Yeah, I'm here.
yeah, I see that my um,
Screen.
video is a bit distorted.
No, no, it
So
looks perfect at this side. It's good.
okay, perfect. Okay, so your as your Scott, you can. I think I get so passionate about these
Absolutely.
subjects that I just get carried away. So you need to stop me if you need something specifically to
Well,
that I must respond to.
I do have something I'd like you to respond to, and I'm going to put this up on the screen. I was just trying to share it with you, but for some reason I'm not able to. But I'll tell you what I'm looking at, and what everybody else is looking at right now, is that infamous 1993 African National Congress circular, which was penned by the current president, Ramaphosa, which says at the bottom, Viva, kill a Boer, kill a farmer. And it's basically talking about how they, when they gain power, are going to basically trash the white population in South Africa. I'm sure you know the document I'm talking about.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen that one specifically, but that's no brainer because there were actually quite a number of those
Yeah, I'll tell you
types
why.
of documents. Yes.
I tell you why I wanted
Yes.
to bring that up with you is because the question is, were we, the minority group in South Africa, set up to fail in 1994 deliberately? In other words, this whole democracy thing, rather like what happened in Rhodesia, was it a deliberate strategy of undermining the stability of South Africa by the Central Intelligence Agency, the World Economic Forum, all these groups who wanted to bring in a one world government?
Yes, definitely. There was definitely a plan to get the white Afrikaans speaking communities out of South Africans' politics and keep them out. And clearly they have failed because luckily in our genes, and one day it would be great if you can get someone like Dr. Lenis van Rooyen, who's actually an expert in genetics, to one day explain the concept of where the Boer comes from and the actual heritage of the Boer nation. Firstly, it was never a name associated with being a farmer. It was a Boer, which was actually a name called, it was a reference to the Boers. It's spelled B-U-H-R, and on the U, it's the umlaut. So the Boers are actually a special nation. They are considered to be basically the original Atlantis community. So they've got a very long history from where their roots are, and basically they have found themselves to be part of the Protestants, the Huguenots, and so forth, who have come to South Africa, and it's actually a war that has been going on against the Boer community or nation at the end of the day. Dr. Lenis van Rooyen have told me that apparently in America he has seen the declaration specifically dated back to 1898 or 1898, whereby above others the Wellcome Trust has specifically indicated that they want to exterminate with all their might the Boer nation of settled in South Africa. So unfortunately, we came to South Africa, but we never, up till today, we don't really know what we are actually doing here. We are totally foreigners in the African continent, and but unfortunately, we've brought a war with us, and it has unfortunately affected the communities in Africa as well. And we are basically seen as the nation to free the African continent at the end of the day. This is nothing prophetic for prophecy or anything, but the fact is that if it wasn't for the white Afrikaans-speaking community or the Boer nation in South Africa, this entire continent of Africa would have been a total wasteland, and had been infiltrated by the West and seen as one big mining dump for their own needs. So South Africa, the white people in South Africa, is the key for conciliation amongst everyone in Africa at the end of the day. It's now the time that we go forward and we basically accept that we need to come to the party. We are the ones who need to reach out to all the communities, all the tribes in South Africa and Africa, and ensure that Africa becomes the leading continent for the next years to come. And that is why countries like the BRICS, inside the BRICS, Russia, China, all of them realize the importance of the African continent. And if we are unable to have a proper system in place, we will not last for another 10 or 20 years. So it's now the right time. We have to change the system. We need to change the economical system via the getting rid of the South African Reserve Bank in the way it is today. We need to get rid of and totally reform the judiciary of South Africa. We have to do that. And also we need to change the political system. A federation, a federal system is definitely something that we need to look at to safeguard us, and not necessarily in line with the current provinces that we've got. We can fit in probably more communities, more federal states in the 9 that we currently have, the 9 provinces. And at the end of the day, if we can be good neighbors to one another, and we've got this overall federal system or federal government which overlooks and not in basically telling each federal state what to do, but it's just there for communication between one another to ensure that the entire federal system operates properly. We must just be careful that a federal system like the United States of America is bound to failure because of the influence the federal government is now playing on each one of these states.
Yes.
To the extent that we are well aware that many of these states don't want to be part of the United States anymore. They want to break out. There's talks that Texas might become one or the first one to possibly exit from the United States. And once the first state is exiting, the entire federal system will also collapse. So we must learn out of the mistakes of the United States to ensure that the federal government stays there, or the purpose of the federal government is only there to ensure that the communication or the good neighborliness between each one of these states are then they're then ensured.
Right.
But that is only my opinion at this point in time. Anyone can differ from that.
Now, look, I just want to look forward, project to the future. And the two big buzzwords at the moment are the G20, which is the West, basically, and then you got BRICS, which is now incorporating Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Egypt. And that's a huge blow on the USA, because the dollar is now under attack, because the petrodollar, which is the basis of it being a global currency, is now falling away because Saudi Arabia is looking at embracing the new BRICS currency. And the BRICS currency is what I want to concentrate on, because, you know, we talk about Russia and China being almost at war with the United States of America. And I personally, as I learn more about what's going on behind the scenes, I think that's a red herring. I don't think that will ever happen. I think when I look at what's going on right now with this new central bank digital currency that's been brought out, it's not just been brought out in the United States of America and the UK. Here in South Africa, the FNB have already opened up accounts using what's called PayShap, which is a new digital South African currency. And that's just for the record, people listening, you've got to understand this, that the company or organization that is rolling out the central bank digital currency in South Africa is called the Boston Consulting Group. Now, they have offices in Sandton, and the Boston Consulting Group are a partner of the World Economic Forum, very closely tied up with Bill Gates, and the central bank digital currency itself is a project being developed by Microsoft, which is Bill Gates. Now, when you look, the reason I'm talking about this is because it's not just the West that are bringing out the central bank digital currency. It's China, it's Russia, it's, well, Australia is the West, but it's the BRICS countries that are also adopting a central bank digital currency as a new form of money, which to me says that this bullshit about what's going on in Ukraine is a red herring. They're already, all these countries, Putin is a young global leader at the World Economic Forum. Xi Jinping often goes to Davos, where they have this gathering of politicians and the elite. They're all together. They're all working for this one world government because they're going to be the kings and queens, and all the rest of us will just be serfs. So do you think that this whole thing with BRICS and the G20 is a distraction, because what's actually going on behind the scenes is a move towards bringing us under this one world government by 2030, where we will own nothing, but we will be happy, in the words of Klaus Schwab, who runs the World Economic Forum. Yeah. Over to you.
Scott, you 100% correct. That I don't believe that that there is any difference between the West and the BRICS. I think that in order to be in some sort of leadership position, either the president or even a judge of the High Court, the directors, the director generals in the state departments, in order to be in that position, you were chosen to be there. And you have not been elected by the people to be there.
Right.
So, and in order to be there, you must be able to be compromised. You must be able to be someone who can be controlled. You will never be, a person like me, for example, will never ever be able to be the president of the country, because I am not, people cannot control me, I cannot be bribed, so I will be totally useless to the handlers at the top. And I always said that there was no such thing as the Cold War. The Americans and the Russians knew what they were doing, and they always kept us creating fear amongst the people, that to make us believe that this terrible nuclear war is going to break loose, and we need to be very cautious against the red danger, the communists. But at the end of the day, communism is nothing more than capitalism in disguise. It's the same coin, but just different sides. It depends on the support mechanism in each one of those countries who are either implementing a communist or a capitalist system. And let me just explain this to especially fellow Christians, to explain that the war that we are fighting, or the battle that we are currently fighting, is definitely a religious war. And this is also the guidance that I have found inside the Bible itself. And I do know that there might be people from the Jewish faith and Islam also watching the same. But the concept is exactly the same. And this is what I found in the Bible, and what have made me to do what I'm also doing. The concept of many people don't know that there were actually two trees in the Garden of Eden. The two trees were, we were made to believe that there was only this one tree in the Garden of Eden, which is the tree of knowledge, good and evil. But there was also the tree of life. And when you investigate these two trees, you will find that the tree of life represents a socialist type of system, whereby the tree of knowledge, good and evil, represents a capitalist system. And why do I say this? Because we also find the answer in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 28, whereby that's the only other part in the Bible where the garden, the story of the Garden of Eden is also shared. And in chapter 28 Ezekiel, it describes exactly what the big sin was. God tells Ezekiel that Satan, or the king of Tyre, who was then Satan, used to be in Eden, and his sin was that he became wealthy through his merchandising, and then he became he alleviated himself to be above God, and then he started wars. And through that process, that is exactly what is happening with the capitalist system. So the big sin, according to me, according to my research, was not disobedience to God. It was that Adam and Eve started participating in capitalism, in trading, because that is what the book of Ezekiel tells us. So once you understand that the Bible, the story of the Bible, is all about an evil system and a good system, or two different systems, and you need to choose which one you want, then everything else will make more sense to you. And that is what has been my driving force at the end of the day, to understand that once you see that the tree of life represents that the roots are represent love, and through love you become it's a righteousness, is the body of the tree, and then love makes you righteous, and also the fruit of the tree of life is life. So and then on the side of the tree of knowledge, good and evil, you will see that the roots represent greed. Through greed you become corrupt, which is the body of the tree, and then through corruptness you will find death. And the fruit of the tree of knowledge, good and evil, is actually death, which is sin. So once you understand that concept, you will approach the entire systems that are in place in a much different way, especially from a religious perspective. And that is exactly what I did. I went and I researched the different systems. And when you also go to chapter 18 of the book of Ezekiel, you will exactly see what God's will was and is. Above others, you will see that God's will is that you are not supposed to ask any interest on any loan that you give to someone. What is currently happening in our system, we are asking interest on loans. That is totally a wrong system in place, which is totally against the Bible. You are supposed to share what you've got in abundance with others who don't have as much as you are. When you take something as security from someone, you must return it afterwards, because that is what the will of God says. So when you look at the current system in place in South Africa, for example, and also, frankly, for the rest of the world, you will see that everything that we are currently doing is in accordance with the system that is not the will of God. And once we change that attitude, and what I have done from my perspective is that once you realize that greed and money is against the principles or the will of God, then you will start to change your life. And what we are doing, we don't expect anything in return for what we do. We share what we've got in abundance with anyone else. And once you've got that concept, everything else will make sense. And the political system will be connected to that, and also the economical system, as well as or the judiciary as well. Very much important is that power is generated by or authority consists out of three parts. One is the leader, secondly it's the law, and thirdly it's enforcement. So you will see that if you've got a system in place, it's either one where the law, which I say is Jesus, the Word is the law, gives power to God, who is the leader. And so through the law, power is given to God, and the law is then enforced by the Holy Spirit, which is the enforcer,
Right.
or the comforter, which the Bible says. That's how I see the Trinity, for example. And once you understand how authority is generated, you can also have, for example, a system whereby there's just enforcement, and power is immediately given to a leader, which is a dictatorship. or the or you will have a system which is very scarce, where the leader will automatically have the authority because the people believe in that person or that entity at the end of the day. So these are things that I have seen from my research in the Bible itself, and which I would like to implement on a daily basis in whatever we are trying to work towards. When it comes to the federal system, I would like to see a concept whereby the law is of such a nature that it gives authority directly to the one who's enforced. So the law in place must be correct and right
Now,
to start off with. Yes.
no, okay, Reyno, look, you're raising a really, it's really the elephant in the room, is what we're talking about here. And that is the world right now in the spiritual war, is it in end times? And I'll give a couple of pointers for people who are watching this live stream. If you go and have a look at the United Nations in New York City, right outside the UN is this beast, which is described in the book of Revelations as the evil one. And it's actually there. The sculpture is right outside the United Nations. It's got hooves of a lion. It's got all these different animal parts. It's got wings. It is perfectly described in the Bible, and it sits outside the United Nations, which is the front for the one world government.
Yes.
And then in CERN, for example, you've got that Hindu angel of death, which is sitting right outside the main entrance of CERN. Her name's Shaba or something like that. But again, you can go and look this up, and you'll see these evil symbols in places where they're like CERN, they're trying to get into other dimensions. In other words, break into spiritual dimensions. And there's so much evil happening in the world. So the question is, if this is not actually a war between nations, is this a war between good and bad that's taking place right now?
Well, in line with what I said just before you came in, now my understanding of what authority is and how I've described it in the three facets, in the three phases, where there's the enforcer or the enforcement of the law gives power to the leader. If we look at what is currently the situation in the world, is that the law, which is capitalism, according to me, which is prohibited by the Bible, and specifically in terms of chapter 18 and 28 of the book of Ezekiel,
And usury.
as I have researched it. Definitely the usury or the interest. But if the law of Satan is being enforced, it gives power to none other than Satan himself.
Right.
So who's in power? If the law that is there is the law that is prohibited by the Bible and is the law of Satan, basically. If that is enforced, it gives power directly to Satan, and according to me, Satan is then in control of the earth at this point in time. So how do we change it? How do we change it with this whole concept of the new world order and everything? Is that the moment when we start enforcing the law of Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit, which is then a system which is explained specifically in chapter 18 of Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel, we will immediately give power on earth directly to God. So this is my journey that I'm going out of.
Right.
In the system change needs to be in line with our religion. And Judaism and even Islam are not that far away from their understanding of the two systems as well. So my understanding is that when God, what was the sin of Eve? Eve started engaging in the capitalist system which Satan presented to her. And Adam, according to me, participated in that. So God simply said that because you chose the system of Satan, you are not welcome in Eden. And we know that to have taken place because the book, chapter 28 of the book of Ezekiel, tells us exactly that is what happened. So that was the reason why Adam and Eve have been expelled from the Garden of Eden. And now the question is that clearly the Garden of Eden, whether it's a place on earth or whether it's the heaven that we believe in, is not currently on earth, according to me. I always tell people that I believe that we are currently in hell. And the reason why I'm saying so is that all these bad things happening around us can never ever happen in a place like heaven. It's not compatible with what we would like to believe heaven is. So we are sitting here, we can make, it is possible through our change of the system that we have been supporting all the time, it is possible to give power back to God on this planet. And this is a religious war, whether you are atheist or whether you are believing in something totally different. At the end of the day, the logic is that there is good and there is evil.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe, and I've seen it, that we always talk about the evil that is going, or the evil organizations. But at the end of the day, the good organizations are also there, but it's not highlighted for very good reasons.
You know what
if the media, yes.
Yeah, you know what I find really disturbing is when I was a young boy, I'm an old fart now, but when I was a young boy back in the early 1960s, life was so different to what it is today that it's unrecognizable. There's one thing that I can say without any without any concern that I'm wrong, and that is that when I was a young boy, life and living was so much better than it is today. And it's like the old drip thing, you know. It's like the boiling frog syndrome. Things happen over a period of time, and you don't realize how they're getting bad to worse. This whole thing with LGBTQ, can you imagine that happening back in the 1960s or 1970s? It would never have happened back then. So the bodies that run the world today are implementing and bringing in these sick, evil things to destroy the whole fabric of society. Well, there's no question about that, is there?
No question about it. And because unfortunately, we are also forced, and unfortunately, let me put this unfortunately first, that we don't object openly about things that's wrong around us. Many of us, even if we say that we are Christian or we are religious, we see all these inequities going on around us, and
Yes.
the wrong of the world, but very few of us really stand up and say that, but that's wrong.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's all about fear, and we've seen this through the COVID-19 lockdown period as well. That people were so scared that they're going to be arrested, and at the end of the day, it turned out that they're also going to reverse the fines in some countries, and also clear the criminal records of people. So all those fear have been for nothing. We were just simply tested. It was a big experiment. It was a big test, and they've got all the data that they wanted to control us for 2030 and beyond. So at the end of the day, we need to realize that just as well as there are bad and evil organizations out there, there are also the good organizations that's fighting this constantly. And I've seen it through my work. I've seen this regularly, that out of the blue, unexpectedly, a door suddenly flings open with the answers that I have been waiting or seeking, and one can call it a miracle,
Yeah.
Which possibly is, but it can also be that the good people who, just like the bad ones, the evil ones, have also watched you all the time, and they are the ones who, call them the angels at the end of the day, if you want to. But they are the ones who's opening those doors for you. And then we realize that at the end of the day, we are much powerful than what this evil system is.
Yeah.
And we are made to believe that we are weak, thanks to the media and to our governments. But they are so scared of us. The moment when we awake and all suddenly realize that the emperor has been parading pitch naked in the streets, and the first child starts to say, "Oh, you are naked, emperor."
Yeah.
That is the time when they fear most.
Now, just
for
on
people to wake up.
just on that point, Reyno, and we're going to have to wrap up this live stream in about the next 10 minutes, because we could be talking for hours, and we don't want to do that. Now, okay, if we look at where we are right now, we're in this sort of space where I think when you talked about people waking up, I think what was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people who were living in the blinkered state where they just believed everything they read on the fake mainstream media, I think a lot of those people have basically come to the realization that we have been deceived, and that the news is not, it's all tailored. A perfect example of this is if a white person beats up a black guy, it's international news. If a black gang torture a white farmer and his family, it doesn't rate a mention. And I'll just leave it at that. But that's how corrupted the media are today. But because of alternative media on the internet and platforms like, I've got to say, Loving Live TV, more and more people are realizing what is actually going on behind the scenes. The veil has been lifted, and it's like Pandora's box. Now the people see you can't close that box again. They know exactly what's happening. What are your thoughts on the awakening of people to what is actually going on behind the scenes?
Well, my message to everyone is be careful, because the evil ones, they might have been exposed, but they are also clever, and they realize that at some stage it will come to the point whereby the people will not believe them anymore. And they have already implemented their plan B and C and D. And unfortunately, many of these structures that they have put in place, like for example, probably the BRICS, probably all these cryptocurrencies going on also, that we think that this is the answer to our problems, is exactly what we should fear, or what we should actually fight against. We are living in a time whereby nothing out there is for certain. We need to question whether the earth is round, whether there was indeed someone going to the moon, whether there was indeed a World Trade Center incident. We need to go and check for ourselves the facts and come to the conclusion ourselves after we've done our homework. People like, for example, people have gone crazy over Donald Trump. And I said from the beginning, people, don't believe this man. He came out of the elite, out of the billionaires club. And you believe that he suddenly have changed his ways. No, sorry people, he did not. Everyone had this big expectations of what Donald Trump is going to do for the world. And the day when I saw him with his mask on as well, and walking and talking about ivermectin and stuff like that, I immediately knew that this guy has been compromised as well. Why would someone, and I also say the same with Putin. He's doing exactly the same things or similar things, whereby you are expecting him as this new age or this new savior of the world, and then suddenly he's doing these strange things that is not aligned with what you want him to do. And that should be our answer. We should not hope that any one of them will suddenly change. If we are not going to bring the change ourselves, by getting our groups to start or separating us from this system that is this evil system in place, and start organizing ourselves outside those parameters, as if this evil system is not even existing. That is the way that we will make them obsolete, and then we will be able to take over control of this world as we should.
Right. Well, I just want to move towards wrapping up this live stream now, but there is an observation I do need to make, and that is that one of the first World Economic Forum's young global leaders was none other than Cyril Ramaphosa. And his brother-in-law, Patrice Motsepe, is actually on the board of the World Economic Forum. And you can go and look this up on their website. You'll see this is true. This is how compromised politics is around the world. You take Rishi Sunak, who's the current Prime Minister in the United Kingdom. His father-in-law, Matey, he owns a company called Infosys. Now, Infosys is a business partner of the World Economic Forum. And the project that they are working on is a social credit system to be incorporated in with the central bank digital currency that's been rolled out. For those people who don't understand what the social credit system is, perhaps you'd like to explain, Reyno.
Well, yeah, that is something very controversial when that would maybe be the end of the judiciary as well, because you will get to a point whereby the moment when you skip a red traffic light, immediately your car will shut down, or money will be withdrawn from your credits as a fine. You will have absolutely no control over what is going to happen with your banking account and or the credits that's to your advantage. Whenever you need to pay your taxes, it will immediately go from your bank account without any control. So we are at the brink of total total control, total lockdown. We will really become a world where we are restricted to smart cities. You will not be able to the time you going to spend outside of your home, if ever, will be determined by the system. And if you not back at your place at the specific time, which have been allotted to you, you will be fined. And probably you will lose all your income for a year and not get food. All the food will be allocated to how nice you were to the system and how obedient you were. So those things are definitely in the making, and
Yes.
if we don't stand up as the world fighting against that, then the end of the human race as we know it is definitely just on our doorstep.
Well, the Deagle, I don't know if you've heard of the Deagle report that came out back in 2015, and that suggested that by 2025, the population in America will have reduced from the current 300 million down to 60 million. That's 240 million people just gone. UK, similar situation, from 60 million people down to about 15 million people. 45 million people just gone. That's in less than 2 years. That's a Deagle prediction. You can actually go to the Wayback Machine and you can actually look up the Deagle population predictions. And what is most concerning about this Deagle thing is that it was a prediction put together by the Rockefellers and by DARPA, the Department of Defense in America, who are the sort of like the modern material arm. But yeah, look, we're living in very, very strange times. Now, I'm going to wrap up this live stream, Reyno, otherwise we're going to be going all night, and I know you've got other things you need to do. Is there a message you'd like to give to people living in South Africa as to what they can do to ensure that South Africa comes out of this failed state situation?
We must stop being obedient. The moment when we are forced, there's a possibility that there's all this news on the streets that there might be a lockdown coming our way sooner than later. They're already planning this next phase of a lockdown, whatever that might be. I'm making the jokes, and maybe I'm not too far away from reality that the next lockdown will be for some sort of alien invasion. But the end of the day, we must stop being obedient, because and go out to the law enforcers, the police women and men out there. Because at the end of the day, they are the ones who's going to implement this and enforce this. Go and talk to them now. Tell them, what are you going to do when there's a next lockdown? And start talking to them, because they are also, most of them are also human, just like me and you. If we get them on our side from the beginning, so also with the defense force, and also security guards. Get them on your side. When you enter a mall, take 2 minutes and have a nice conversation with the security guard. Tell him or her about what is he or her going to do with the next lockdown. Will they again be so strict, or will they realize that there are more of us than of them, and meaning them, the evil, the government and those who are their handlers. Let's go out and spread the word of non-compliance, and ensure that the day when the lockdown comes, or when there's an order committing us to our homes again, that we are prepared and do not comply, irrespective of the consequences that they say we're going to have.
Right. Reyno, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you again. And look, we'll have to do this again before Christmas, have another live stream, because there's so much we haven't touched on, which we could have touched on tonight. But if we make these live streams too long, people say, what, 3 hours? No, I haven't got 3 hours, but 90 minutes they tend to stick with you. All right, Reyno, thank you. Have a great evening.
The same to you. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, bye.
Have a nice evening.
Bye. All right, guys, that was Reyno de Beer, and we were talking about a whole lot of stuff, but basically we started off talking about South Africa and what potential solutions were, and then we moved into the global situation and what's happening around the world today. And I can't think of a better song or theme song to go out with than this adaptation of the old South African national anthem. So we'll play that tonight. Please remember to register on lovinglivetv.com to be kept informed, and please make sure that you go and check out the forum on lovinglivetv.com. It's an amazing forum. There's over 200 PDFs that you can download, which include everything from books to cooking to the spices to what went on during COVID. There's a whole range of stuff in there that you can go and download free of charge. As I say, over 200 PDFs, and they're all categorized, so you can go into health, for example, or into education, etc., etc. So please do check that out on our forums. Thank you to the mods for keeping an eye on the live stream, and don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we have another live stream, and of course, right through the week, hopefully load shedding dependent, we should have live streams every night this week. Okay, here comes the closing song, guys. Take care and have a great evening. Bye for now.
Uit die blauw van ons hemel, uit die diepte van ons see, hoor ons ver verlate vlaktes waar die kranse antwoord gee. Ons sal antwoord op jou roepstem, ons sal offer wat jy vraag. Ons sal lewe, ons sal sterwe, ons vir jou Suid-Afrika. Ek wil antwoord op jou roepstem, maar nie offer wat jy vraag. Das bloed op die plase van boere wat hulp vraag. S'nags hoor jy die sirenes, maar jy kyk ander pad. Niks daarvan op TV, net soms in die koerant. Das kieme in die water, Eskom gee beurtkrag. Rioolstank in die strate,